RubyAnn Stiegelmeier. My SOAR research project was on testing the potential feasibility of using product placement, which is the most common and one of the most major advertising models used in media companies. I wanted to test out the feasibility of using that in a local setting, creating local media and incorporating local businesses. And I have to say, first of all, that my SOAR mentor and also the SOAR committee overall has been really supportive of my project, which is a really good feeling as a student because it allowed me the freedom to just research the concept and find out if it would work and if there are any additional considerations to develop it further in the future. So first of all, I always like to start with this screen just because I'm really curious what you all notice about what's in common with each of these photos. And seriously, feel free to speak up. What's the commonality in each of those photos? And if I maybe switch to the next photo, same exact place on the screen. But if you switch back and forth between them, can you tell that the label and the branding is actually, label, branding, or some figure of the concept is actually featured in these pictures versus the first one? The difference between these two sets of pictures is one of the core concepts of my research project, because not only is product placement one of the most common and effective advertising strategies used, but subtle placement, much like that first screen, subtle placement like this, statistics show that subtle placement of an item, a concept, or a brand is far more powerful to the end user than something with a brand or a logo associated with it. Literally, people and viewers connect more with a cup of coffee than they do with seeing the Starbucks logo. And so, that exact concept, subtle placements are more powerful than overt placements, is one of the threads of my project because I'm guessing each of you have seen or read at least one of these media projects. And I've set them up on a sort of spectrum on the scale of subtle to overt placements. And my next question for you is, how many of you know someone who either has traveled to New Zealand or Scotland, or at some point talked about wanting to travel to New Zealand or Scotland because they've seen those places as the setting for a form of major media? I'm going to hop ahead a couple of slides just because I've used this presentation as part of approaching my focus group members. But at this point, I really want to point out that those media concepts, even if you're just looking at a film like Lord of the Rings, where New Zealand is never mentioned, you're just seeing this scenery, that creates cultural tourism, and cultural tourism statistics directly link the production of creative works with economic benefit to the area where they're presented. That's why, literally, that's why people travel to New Zealand to see the round door. In the United States, cultural tourism creates an annual impact of $123.6 billion per year. 30% of people report that specific art or a cultural event actually influenced their choice of where they're going to spend their vacation. And so my project, my SOAR project, literally posed the question, why not do the same thing? Why not create a novel set in my hometown, centered around themes of community support, showcasing a character experiencing both heartwarming moments but also real-life relatable struggles, and add in plenty of humor because Lord knows we all like to laugh. And the next step of my SOAR project was to take that concept and offer it to a set of 5 local business owners and get their feedback on whether or not they would pay any money at all, some money, or a large amount of money to have either their products or their business incorporated in the novel. Now, since you guys probably haven't seen my actual SOAR project proposal, the reason why I chose a novel and not a movie is just because, come on, the cost of production. As a college student, I can find a free writing platform and test out my concept. I don't have a couple $100,000 to actually film a TV series at this time. Stay tuned. The goal of my project was to create tasteful, research-driven cultural tourism opportunities for my community through an intelligent approach to product placement based on all of this research. So I built a sample marketing proposal. In order to do this, I had to find out what the definition of CPM is and how advertising functions. CPM is a basic advertising term used to calculate the cost per 1,000 impressions or cost per mil. And my marketing proposal included a couple of different aspects of both local and statewide advertising. And most importantly, I created a completely evergreen form of marketing as opposed to traditional advertising where businesses that are paying a fee for advertising only get exposure for up to about a month. Typical advertising contracts only last about a week. Mine is evergreen. I offered these businesses 3 separate tiers of my sample marketing proposal at different price points and included comparison cost averages for a comparative cost of Facebook or social media advertising for a similar number of views so that they could compare the CPM cost between my evergreen model versus the traditional short-term CPM cost. The price points I included were $438.05, $868.10, and $1,588.10, just to allow each business to choose an option that might already fit into their existing advertising budget. As you can see also in the third line of my chart, I also built into the marketing proposal the option for these businesses to receive copies of the book for them to create their own quid pro quo marketing of something that also already showcased their business. This is some of the research that influenced my proposal. Most importantly, the need for congruence. In addition to subtle placement being important, it is essential that when you're placing even a non-branded item in connection with a character in a form of media, the aspects of that product need to fit with the personality aspects of the character that's presenting them. That is the core of why product placement works, because we relate to people and we relate to items because we relate first to people. For instance, if you're watching a movie about, let's say, for example, mention something from one of my previous screens, if you're gonna watch a movie about cowboys set in Western Montana, what's the most congruent beverage that you can picture them drinking? Whiskey or beer? Would Yellowstone's plot make sense if the cowboys on the Dutton Ranch were drinking White Claws? That right there is a good example of why the need for congruence is so important. If you have any questions about my other research, I'm happy to walk you through that. I will just say that the research portion of my project easily took the most time and energy, just because in order to recreate advertising in a new and innovative way, it's important to understand how it already works. I also found data on the numbers of people and the percentage of viewers that actually purchased an item after seeing it in media. And it came down to just one positive impression is enough for a viewer to create a positive association with that product. They don't even have to know how it works. And I'm gonna get a little bit egotistical here, but this functions as simply as the young woman in the first screen wearing a blue striped shirt, if that woman on screen goes through an experience that you emotionally relate to, guess what pattern of shirt, let alone color, you're statistically most likely to buy the next time you're in TJ Maxx? A blue and white striped shirt. So let's hop ahead to the fun part, because this is when things got really fun. I wrote a test novel set in Dickinson, North Dakota. And for the record, the story is about a young woman who's going through a situation where she's not experiencing support from her family, and the community of Dickinson actually wraps their arms around her and bolsters her with support. The reason why I chose those themes is just so that my focus group members, the businesses that I approached, could automatically see that I was applying my research in my concept. Not just presenting them with a sales pitch, but truly presenting them with an opportunity. I presented my concept to 5 separate businesses across a mix of industries. I chose different sets of which businesses had more employees than others, and especially whether they were sole proprietors or retail-based product businesses. I attained IRB exemption for these mock pitch sessions, and this is the feedback that I got. 80%, and yes, I know 5 businesses is a small number of individuals to get feedback from, but I actually got a green light from them to keep asking people because of the type of feedback that I got. 80% of my respondents said that they would actually participate in this model if it became available locally. One business said no, and while I'm not allowed to relay their specific reasons because I'm supposed to maintain confidentiality and only present in aggregate forms of data, it was because that business, this just did not fit their specific business model, but they did give me helpful feedback on that it would be a better fit for a retail or a larger type of business. I had a mix of responses on what aspect of the advertising model was most attractive to people, including the evergreen aspect, their ability to choose their price point, and especially the fact that it's a type of advertising that creates ongoing relationships in a cyclical manner. I also got a bit of a mixed range of options on which price point, and remember, tier 1 was a little over 400, tier 2 was a little over 800, and tier 3 was 1500. Most businesses responded that they would start out at the initial price point, but I did get feedback that they would be more likely to either choose a higher tier or spend more on a tier of the model if I had actual ROI numbers, return on investment, and had completed this project successfully, and I could present future partners with data on how it actually turned out. And I got their feedback on which placement options would be best. This is a completely customizable form of advertising, so they actually have the capacity to choose or give feedback on which placement options would fit their business best. I also got the reverse. Are there any placements that would create concerns for your business? There's always a concern of misrepresentation, but once again, this is feedback that can be taken and applied to future iterations of this model. I also got some information about what types of advertising businesses currently use and how much they spend. And once again, 80% of my respondents said that they would actually like to be notified if the advertising model becomes available locally. So that's the results of my SOAR project. I had a hunch that this was an opportunity. It is an opportunity, and real people see that. And so my goal for today's presentation is, once we get to the question and answer stage, feel free to discuss any challenges you see in this model with me. I'm totally open to input. And most of all, thank you for your time.